oh man, is this not the best time of year? Y'all have probably started putting out those Christmas decorations, prepping that turkey for next Thanksgiving, and Florida fall is finally here. We've got a game this Saturday in the swamp where sweatshirt weather may be required. Tis the season for thankfulness. Will the Gators be thankful for keeping Billy Napier after this Saturday and maybe an early bid to a bowl game? We will find out as the Gators take on the number 9 Ole Miss Rebels in the Swamp. Welcome into another episode of the All Kinds Weather Forecast. I am your host, Chris Yanes, here in the heart of Gator Nation. And let me tell you, as always, we've got a jam-packed show for you today. Can the Gators build upon the momentum of the last week and a half? Florida, of course, has another star-studded visitors list coming to the Swamp to watch the game this Saturday, and as they look for more flips from another in-state rival. And we've got a fresh model update from Dustin Smith and a new segment to add to our show related to that. And of course, we're going to continue the new tradition of taking some fan questions and reading fan comments from previous shows. But before we dive into all of that, I've got a quick favor to ask. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a single episode of the All Kinds Weather Forecast. And hey, don't forget to like this video if you're fired up as we are about the Gators this weekend in their matchup. Your support means everything to us, and it helps get this content out to more of Gator Nation. We also would love to hear from you. Drop a comment down below. Give us your prediction this weekend. Can the Gators get bowl eligible and upset the Ole Miss Rebels in the Swamp? And if you're listening on one of our audio platforms, please take a moment to rate and review the show. Leaving a 5-star rating really helps us reach even more listeners. We appreciate it, Gator Nation. And we want to shout out our sponsors. The All Kinds Weather Forecast is proudly sponsored by 401k Generation, the wealth management company that helps you invest today for your future tomorrow. Their team of advisors is committed to providing guidance and education for your 401k plan and its participants. They also offer a range of enrollment solutions tailored to meet the unique needs of your company's 401k plan. Whether it's saving for your child's college, investment advice, or even your retirement, 401k Generation's team of advisors makes getting to know you their top priority. Their advisors will tailor a path to assist you in navigating life's financial milestones and reaching your financial goals. 401k Generation, building stronger futures, one generation at a time. For more information, contact them at 866-998-5879 or visit their website at 401kgeneration.com. And we want to shout out the official apparel partner of the All Kinds Weather Forecast, Heads and Tails, located right here in Tampa, Florida. Last night, coming off an amazing annual sip and shop event where there were a lot of Gator fans in there buying, gearing up for the season, and also getting ahead of their holiday shopping. I personally partook in all of that. It supported our local Gator Club to help fund future scholarships of Gators that are going to be coming to the University of Florida next year. And for all of our listeners and viewers, please take advantage of the code IAKOW30 for 30% off in-store or online at theheadsandtails.com. All right, Gator Nation, we've got a big game this weekend here in the Swamp. And I think we'll open the show with the fact that it feels like the Gators got a little momentum right now. You know, changes in the air, and I don't think it's just the lower temperatures here as that fall weather has finally started to settle in here at Florida. You know, let's rewind the clock back. It's been almost 2 years now since DJ Lagway committed to the University of Florida. And back in January when he enrolled, there was a massive hype surrounding him and his enrollment to Florida, the 5-star prospect coming from Texas playing under Friday Night Lights there. He was probably the most anticipated recruit since Tim Tebow. A lot of young pressure for the quarterback, but he has proven time and time again that he can absolutely handle it. Since he is now started as a quarterback for Florida, in all games he's finished, he is now 3-0 as a Gator starter. I mean, this season has been nothing but a roller coaster for Florida. You have the beginning of the year, Florida drops 2 of its first 3 games against teams that many thought should be at least on level playing field with, but it didn't look like that when we played them at home in Miami and Texas A&M respectively. Gators get a little bit of momentum in end of September into October with wins over inferior opponents in Mississippi State, UCF. They should have upset a Tennessee team that is competing for a berth in the college football playoff. And then, of course, we lose Graham Mertz in that game. DJ Lagway then becomes the starter, beats Kentucky, has Georgia on the ropes midway through the first half until he goes down and is carted off the field with that leg injury. Florida, of course, falls in that game, ultimately falls the following week when he doesn't play against Texas. But I think there was a moment in that game where everybody thinks about now, and it was though he was carted off the field and how he galvanized the support of all of the players around him. And it was in that moment we all realized that he truly was special. The hype was there. There was substance to what we had been hearing about for now nearly 2 years since he committed back in December of 2022. And I think because of that, this momentum this time, where we've talked in the past, can Billy Napier actually sustain momentum? Can he build upon big wins? He's been good for one win a season. This year it was LSU. Last year it was Tennessee in September. And the year before that, the opening game for Billy Napier in his tenure here against Utah. But he never has been able to sustain it. His longest win streak as a Gators football coach is 3 games to date. And that was the first part of last season. And now we're looking at the fact that could we be on the precipice of it again? Florida's recruiting is ticking back up. We'll talk about the visitors list later in the show. But I would challenge people to think that this might be a little bit different because of the fact that DJ Lagway has the keys to the kingdom and that there is substance behind what he is doing. Last week's performance against LSU, throwing for 226 yards and a touchdown and a gutsy performance that earned him SEC Freshman of the Week honors. Certainly not his last big honor that he probably will get here as a Gator quarterback. What stands out for me is that Lagway is a leader of this program. He is the face of it. Before the LSU game, standing at the end of the tunnel, greeting every single guy as he came onto the field. And the other thing is he learns from his mistakes. He's learning from his mistakes in real time. When he gets an interception, he comes back strong from it. Looking back to that Tennessee game, he threw an interception, comes back, throws the game-tying touchdown to force it to overtime. Last week against LSU, almost had 2 interceptions in the game. Comes back, though, and leads the Gators to multiple scoring drives that ultimately resulted in Florida winning by 11 points. It's been a crazy roller coaster of a season. But DJ Lagway finally may have given the Gators what they've been looking for now for well over a decade. And that is stability. Stability, stability, stability. That is the bedrock of programs that are successful in college football. We won't know for sure if this is real until Saturday when we line it up at high noon in the Swamp, play Ole Miss, and then ultimately then the following week take on FSU, who Florida should definitely beat. But I really believe now Florida has a leader, so long as he stays healthy and is able to go. Florida can compete with nearly any team in the country because they may have the future star quarterback of its game finally back in a Gator uniform, similar to when we had Tim Tebow in the day. That's why today my water cup, I brought it for our viewers. You can see I got the old 15 Ring of Honor one. We'll take a drink from that and move on to our next segment. But I wanted to lead the show off with that. I thought it was important to spend a lot of debate about whether or not this is some real substance. We talked about it in our last episode, kind of a sobering reality of where we are. There's a long way to go to get back to where we are. I think that was kind of where we ultimately were getting at when you and I spoke about it in our last show. But we're going to find out this Saturday if we've turned a corner. We posed that question to our fans. We're going to read some of the comments from that show. Has Florida turned a corner? The ultimate answer will come against Ole Miss this Saturday. And hopefully we get the answer we're all looking for. Now, speaking of Ole Miss, we got to break down this matchup. Let's shift our focus to this. This is a big one for both teams. For different reasons, of course. Florida will secure bowl eligibility, get above 500, and be finished 500 in SEC play for the first time since 2020. Florida's had a losing conference record the last 3 seasons. Ole Miss, on the other hand, has a berth in the college football playoff on the line if they win this game and then beat their in-state rival next week against Mississippi State. That's what's standing between them and a college football playoff berth. And if you look at the odds out there, Ole Miss is in the top 5 for best chance to win a national championship at 9-1 odds. Those are very good. In comparison, Georgia's at 7-1. So that shows that they are definitely contenders right now. And we're going to break down here in a short time period the statistics that certainly back that up. But Ole Miss is coming to the Swamp with everything to play for and everything on the line. Florida would be playing spoiler if they defeated them this Saturday, effectively ending Ole Miss's chance at the college football playoff berth. And then beside that, it's the storyline that Florida fans for months and even us here on this show talked about wanted Lane Kiffin to be the successor to Billy Napier if he was fired here at the University of Florida. He will be taking this on this Gators team who the fans wanted. And it's an interesting dichotomy between the fact that also Billy Napier probably knows that. Does he coach with that in mind and let that be his fuel to the fire, if you will, in his coaching saying, I want to go and show Gator fans that you were wrong to want this guy. I am your guy. Scott Strickland, the administration who gave him a vote of confidence, a letter of confidence. This was the right decision, and I'm going to prove you right. And Lane Kiffin is out there probably motivated to say, yeah, Gator Nation, you wish you had me, but you can't because I'm at where I want to be in Ole Miss, a school that has gone all in on NIL in the 2024 season and bringing transfers in, one of which we are very familiar with, and one Princey Umanmielen, who's second on Ole Miss's team with 9.5 sacks. And speaking of sacks, Ole Miss leads the nation with 46. 46 sacks. That is a dangerous defensive line, an elite defensive line. Florida ranks top 5, though, in pass protection. According to Pro Football Focus, they've only given up 6 sacks all season in pass pro. So Florida, has an opportunity here to really, I think, it's strength on strength here, right? You've got a defensive line that has an ability to rack up the sacks, as we've talked about. And then you have a offensive line that has done a good job protecting the quarterback this season in pass pro. And last week, when we absolutely needed them to protect DJ Lagway, well, he still is hampered from a hamstring injury. That will be the case again this Saturday. They have been able to protect the quarterback. Can they do it again against this vaunted Ole Miss defensive line? And then you've got, I think, a quarterback duel. Jackson Dart, one of the best quarterbacks in all of the SEC, throwing for almost 71% completion percentage, over 3,400 yards, 22 touchdowns to only 4 interceptions. Florida has faced quarterbacks over the last couple of weeks in Carson Beck against Georgia and last week against Garrett Nussmeier, who have thrown a lot of interceptions this season, put up prolific passing numbers, but struggled in turning the ball over. Jackson Dart has not been that. And actually, Jackson Dart has a threat to run with his feet. He actually will be the leading rusher available for Ole Miss on the field this season. He has 304 yards on the season on the ground, 3 touchdowns to add to that. The leading rusher on Ole Miss is Henry Parrish Jr., a recruit that Gator fans would be familiar with because we did recruit him at one point. He, however, is unavailable in this game. So Jackson Dart actually is the leading rusher for Ole Miss. So that just goes to show the type of player that he is. And Ole Miss is also getting healthier in that their leading receiver, Trey Harris, who's 13 yards shy of a 1,000-yard season, will be available for this game. I've talked a lot about how Florida's duo of Chimere Dike and Elijah Badger have combined together almost average over 20 yards a catch on the season. Ole Miss has another duo in that in Jordan Watkins and Antoine Wells Jr., who combined average 20 yards a catch this season. Caden Lee, their second leading receiver, with almost 700 yards on the season and 40 catches. Ole Miss has a lot of options to be incredibly explosive on offense. And that is going to put a lot of pressure on a Gators defensive backfield that is still hampered from injury. Devin Moore will not be available for this game. I'm starting to believe he may not be available for the rest of the season based on, kind of the consistency on the availability report. We haven't heard a whole lot from the staff on his outlook for the remainder of the season. We're going to need to have another Herculean effort from guys like Dejon Johnson, Jamar Grimsley, potentially Cormani McClain, Trokeezy Bridges, who's Mr. Versatility, as we've named him back there. And we're going to need some big efforts from the safety room in Bryce Thornton and Jordan Castell to really not let them get beat over the top, because if that happens, it could be a field day for Jackson Dart. in Lane Kiffin and calling plays. And they certainly have shown the ability to do that in SEC play this season, putting up games where they scored 63 on a team like Arkansas, an SEC opponent, put up almost 30 against Georgia. They can win in a variety of ways, but certainly their passing attack is very prolific and one that's going to keep Florida on the edge of their seat. And, on the flip side of that, Florida's passing attack has shown an ability to really stretch the field. DJ Lagway this season leads all of quarterbacks of 20 throws, 20 yards or more, with a QB rating of 90.4, according to Pro Football Focus. Incredibly impressive for the freshman quarterback. Doing so with receivers like Chim DK, Elijah Badger. We saw the impact that Elijah Badger had last week, 6 catches, 131 yards in his touchdown performance. Chim DK also has been incredibly reliable this season in that regard. We're going to need to see that effort again from him this season, or rather in this game. And, will we see somebody in the backfield also continue to step up? Jaden Ball and Jacoby Jackson have held it down in the backfield for Florida from a running perspective, but Montrell Johnson Jr. did play last week. He was not listed on the injury report this week for the first time since his injury against Tennessee. Will he be available now in this game, potentially to start actually for the first time since the Tennessee game when he was injured? Be interested to see the rotation at running back and how Billy Napier handles that, given the fact that Jaden Ball has been nothing short of amazing. But Florida has 3 ball carriers that average over 5 yards a carry. This offensive line has continued to improve over the season, and they're going to need to have an incredible effort on Saturday against, we talked about that defensive line and what they've been able to do from a pass rush perspective. But a balanced attack could certainly keep Ole Miss on its heels and change up their defensive game plan. So a lot to think about here on this Saturday when we really break this whole thing down. Now, looking at a couple of player spotlights in this game, obviously we've talked a lot about DJ Lagway. He's proven he can make big plays, especially in the deep passing game like we talked about, and throws 20 yards or more. But against this Ole Miss pass rush, he's going to have to probably make a lot more quicker decisions. Can he stay cool under pressure? That'll lead Florida to the upset. And while I said that he's one of the best passers in Pro Football Focus when it comes to throw of 20 yards or more, he's one of the worst for between 5 and 10 yards. It's kind of amazing, and you look at a quarterback like Graham Mertz, it probably is the flip side of that. That was the difference between those two when we were in that 2 quarterback system while they were both healthy. But that's going to be the key here. Can Florida maybe get some quick hitters, get those guys into space instead of having to let the plays develop? Because if Florida is relying on long developing plays of passes down the field, it's going to put Lagway in a spot where he could potentially get sacked. He's not going to have an ability to run in this game again, most likely. I don't think that hamstring is fully healed yet. So I know he's probably progressed, but not to the point where he's going to be the old DJ Lagway. So that's going to be interesting to see how Florida's coaching staff handles that. There's Jackson Dart. He is the engine of their offense. And Florida's defense is going to have to find a way to disrupt him. Last week, Florida came up with a season-high 7 sacks on the year. This is an Ole Miss team where in the 2 games that they lost against Kentucky and LSU, they gave up 10 sacks between those 2 games. In the combined 8 games that they have won, they gave up 10 sacks. So that has been the key to stopping Ole Miss, is whenever a team has been able to get 5 or more sacks on Ole Miss, they've won the game. So a little preview there, a spoiler, or maybe a padlock stack, a key to the game that I'm going to have is the pressure that Florida is going to be able to generate against Ole Miss's offensive line and Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart, like I said, can use his feet too. So even if Florida gets home back there, do they set the edge? Do they not let him get out of the pocket? Well, that's going to be a big key. You can't let Jackson Dart extend plays where he might find guys down the field, because Ole Miss receivers are going to get open. They are going to make plays in this game. They have a very good receiving core, like I talked about. So Florida, if they do get back there, they're going to have to bring Dart to the ground. Talked about Princey Umanmielen. He was a huge part of this Gator defense the last couple of seasons before he transferred to Ole Miss. He's one of the top SEC sack leaders as well as on this team. Oddly enough, not the top sack leader on the defense. That actually goes to Son Terrain Perkins, linebacker who has 10 sacks, but Prince Umanulum at 9.5. So second leading on the team. And I think it's going to be interesting to see some of these guys who remember Princely in that locker room. And do we see Gators play with a little bit of pride on Saturday? I would. I mean, look how they handled the situation with Trevor Etienne a couple of weeks ago. Etienne was a non-factor. He was a non-factor in that game. Of course, he did get injured, but even before, he was not. He's 7 carries for 31 yards, not a factor. And I'm curious to see if there's that same level of fire and vigor from this Florida team who, we bought into Billy Napier. We believed in Billy Napier. We've studied the course. We didn't leave. And Princely moved on to greener pastures. And look, there were times last year where Princely played out of position, did not set the edge very well, but he made plays. And I think Gator fans, even us on this show at times were probably pretty hard on him. But he's a great player, and he's been very well coached, obviously, at Ole Miss, coming up from Pete Golden's defensive scheme. And you can bet he's gonna definitely have a chip on his shoulder when he comes to the Swamp. So that's gonna be a really fun matchup to see in this game. And I think this is the new age of college football that we play in, right? You've got transfers, guys that can transfer to any school they want at any time. And it just adds that extra layer of storyline for games like this. So really excited to see all of that. I think it's going to be really interesting nonetheless. And we'll see how it all plays out ultimately. So this matchup marks the 26th time that Florida and Ole Miss will play. The all-time series is actually knotted up at 12-12 with one tie. The last time these two teams played was in 2020. It was actually the opening game in the COVID season where Florida came out victorious in a shootout 51-35. It was kind of the coming out party for Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts, the Kyle to Kyle connection that hooked up several times on that day. But we also all remember the 2015 matchup several years before that when one Will Greer Will Greer had his coming out party. And, talking a little bit about this game where you have DJ Lagway, who I don't think has had his coming out party yet. I think he's had some really great moments. We all talk about the Samford game. We talk about his performance against Kentucky. Played great in the first half against Georgia before he went down. Played great last week. But I don't know if he's had a memorable game performance yet. And it's against teams like Ole Miss where that happens. In 2015, everybody remembers the memory. It was one of my favorite games as a student. I was there at the University of Florida at the time. And I'll never forget when in that thick early October humid night, Will Greer threw off his back foot and hit DeMarcus Robinson 45 yards downfield to give the Gators the lead, in which they did not relinquish and look back. The defense had an incredibly dominant performance, one that many gave Gator fans the belief that this team could go all the way with Will Greer in this defense. And of course, we all know what happened and it was derailed. But this is the type of matchup, the moment where you have an Ole Miss team that is looking to punch their ticket to the college football playoff for the first time in school history. Perhaps the biggest game in Ole Miss modern history. And DJ Lagway is standing in the way of that. And potentially a legendary performance that will add to the story, will add to the chapters, books of his time here at the University of Florida. The series is all knotted up. Bowl eligibility and the future of the Gator program is on the line. Ole Miss's college football playoff is on the line. The storylines are pretty immaculate, just like the weather it'll be on Saturday. I cannot wait to see it. And we'll be giving here my keys to the game and a prediction here shortly. But I'm curious to see if maybe this is the moment we finally say DJ Lagway truly has arrived as the next great quarterback here in the SEC, and that Florida's momentum is not a farce, but the beginning of something great in the years to come. All right, switching gears now, though, we're going to be, I think you all remember Dustin Smith's power ranking, the In All Kinds of Weather power rankings, the forecaster model that he has dubbed. And we're excited to bring it back. Dustin has re-upped it. And we're going to be giving out also predictions to games in which, based on the model, based on the line, encouraging you maybe to go place some bets somewhere for those out there that maybe know somebody with a bet online or a bookie, my bookie or Hard Rock, one of those. Let's talk. Our lines are open for maybe a partnership there. We'd love to do this, but this is going to be a new segment moving forward where we're going to be revealing the power rankings of the top 25, the SEC power ranking, and then of course our predictions for not just our game, but 9 other games across the country, which we will continue to track, and we'll make this a staple of our show. So, without further ado, let's unveil the top 25 here of the 2024 Week 13 power ranking. Coming in at number 1, you have the Alabama Crimson Tide, who many left for dead a couple of weeks ago after a loss to Tennessee. Now, all of a sudden, have the big momentum in college football. They have a chance to make the SEC championship still and get that top 4 seed. We'll see if they're able to pull that off. Behind them, number 2, Georgia, a team that had a good win against Tennessee last weekend at home as they continue to build on that momentum. Number 3, Ohio State. Some models and metrics actually have them as the top team in the country, but they're sitting right there with everything to play for and a huge matchup at home this weekend against the team that is ranked 12th in this model, Indiana Hoosiers. Coming in at number 4, a team that slaughtered Florida 2 weeks ago, the Texas Longhorns. Also a team that has a chance to get a berth in the SEC championship game with a win against Kentucky and on the road against Texas A&M next weekend. Coming in at 5, the team that beat Florida in its opening weekend, the Miami Hurricanes, who 2 weeks ago fell to Georgia Tech. Do they rebound against Wake Forest this Saturday? Coming in at number 6, the team that the Gators play this Saturday, Ole Miss Rebels, 3 spots higher than where they are currently ranked in the playoff. Power ranking does like Ole Miss a lot. Number 7, we got Oregon, who's ranked number 1 in the country, but the power ranking is not as high on them. Many believe maybe they haven't played the strongest Big Ten schedule yet this season. Another big team coming up after them at number 8, Penn State, followed by number 9, Notre Dame, who another team that right now has the 82nd ranked strength of schedule, one of the lowest of all the teams. They take on Army, who is also ranked, but not power ranked in this ranking. So we'll see how that matchup goes. Number 10, Tennessee, who's still hanging on by a thread for a potential playoff berth. They're probably going to need to have a couple of things happen for them to do that. Number 11, Clemson, waiting in the wings. If they can get to the ACC championship, they could get a berth in the college football playoff. That's probably the only way they do get it, though. Indiana, with everything to play for this Saturday, they go to Ohio State. If they win that game, they likely make the college football playoff, regardless of even what happens the following week when they play Purdue. Number 13, USC. Yes, USC, number 13. This is a team that has severely underachieved their ranking, just like Florida has underachieved theirs, who is power ranked in this model as well. This is the reminder. This is a power ranking, not a poll. Number 14, Texas A&M, a team that has a chance to rise up if they're able to beat Texas next week. But they've got to look out for Auburn, who I think is on upset alert. They're only a 2.5-point favorite on the road. Number 15, LSU, the team that the Gators defeated last week. They take on Vanderbilt and Diego Pavia this weekend. Number 16, Boise State, could be that G5 team that makes it in the college football playoff. And don't look down, number 17, the Pony Express is back. They have everything to play for. If they win out, they will play for the ACC championship and a chance for a berth in the college football playoff. Number 18, Missouri, who is definitely underachieved in their expectations for the beginning of the year, out of the college football playoff hunt now after their 3rd loss last week. Number 19, Louisville, who defeated Clemson a couple of weeks ago. And then now checking in at number 20, up 5 spots from the week before, the Florida Gators, with a chance to continue to rise in the power rankings if they were to beat the number 6 team in this ranking this week. Number 21, Iowa State, who's still trying to get in through as a Big 12 champion. 22, Oklahoma, who takes on the number one team at home this weekend. Oklahoma, not as big of an underdog as may some think. That's going to be a sneaky game. We'll give you the prediction on that one later. Number 23, Iowa. Number 24, South Carolina, who is red hot right now. And number 25, Kansas State. So that is our week 13 power ranking. We'll be posting that here on the All Kinds of Weather Instagram and Twitter page. And make sure you're following along there. Let us know your thoughts. We always love the controversy of a power ranking. Once again, folks, power rankings are not polls. It does not mean it's the most deserving. It just means how teams are on a neutral field based on the average output that they give. And with that, we will give a quick rundown of the SEC power rankings. So right now, there are 11 of the 16 teams power ranked in the top 25. Of course, it goes Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Texas A&M, LSU, Missouri, Florida, Oklahoma, and South Carolina. Auburn is actually the 26th ranked power team, followed by Arkansas, who's the 27th overall. They come in at 12 and 13 in the SEC. Kentucky at 14, Vanderbilt at 15, Mississippi State at 16. So highly competitive conference. It looks like at this point, outside of most likely Kentucky and Mississippi State, every SEC team will probably make a bowl game this season. That just goes to show the depth of this conference, how difficult it is to play week in and week out. But it makes college football, it makes SEC football that much better. And it really highlights the fact why you're going to see consistently probably 4 to 5 SEC teams make the college football playoff on an annual basis. So but that's what Florida's got to compete against right now. We have Florida currently ranked 9th out of 16. Now I think for a while, we were middling toward the bottom. We're at least moving back up to average. We certainly want to be well above that, though, in years and power rankings to come. All right, let's give our matchup and top matchup predictions. So this week, as we talked about it, the top matchup, the game of the week of the power ranking, Indiana and Ohio State. The All Kinds of Weather forecaster actually says to bet Ohio State to not only win but cover. The betting line is right now at minus 13.5 according to ESPN Bet. The model likes Ohio State by 16. So we'll see right there. I think Indiana has certainly a far out achieved what many thought they could do, but maybe it comes to an end this week. Colorado and Kansas. Right now, Colorado is a 3-point favorite at home. Or I'm sorry, on the road. The model, however, likes Kansas. Kansas is another team like Florida, has definitely underachieved their power ranking this year. Kansas playing at home, the model actually likes Kansas to win outright here. Penn State at Minnesota, a potential upset alert spot here. The model likes Minnesota to cover and win. ESPN Bet has Penn State as a 12.5-point favorite, but it only has them winning by 7. So right there, maybe take Minnesota in this game to at least cover. Arizona State, BYU, rather. Arizona State is a 3-point favorite at home. The model likes that. They have Arizona State winning by 4. And BYU, a team that's maybe running out of gas here at the end of the season. Lost heartbreaker last week to Kansas, another team we just previewed on this matchup set. Kentucky and Texas. Texas, a 20.5-point favorite at home, a very big spread to cover. But the model actually likes it. It has Texas winning by 21. So right on the money with that one right there. Louisville playing Pittsburgh at home, another team in Pittsburgh that was undefeated for a while and has also now suffered 2 losses. Louisville is an 8-point favorite at home. The model has Louisville winning by 11. We talked about it and alluded to it a minute ago. A&M will take on Auburn at Jordan-Hare. The model has A&M. I'm sorry, the ESPN Bet has A&M as a 2.5-point favorite, like I mentioned. However, the model says to pick Auburn to win outright. They like the upset in that matchup and a potential look-ahead spot for Texas A&M. Alabama and Oklahoma, the number 1 team in the power ranking against the number 22 team. Alabama is almost a 2-touchdown favorite, 13.5 points favored against Oklahoma. The model, however, likes the Oklahoma cover there. They only have Alabama winning by 10. Could be a sneaky game there. And another look-ahead spot for next week when Alabama has the Iron Bowl. Final game before we get to the Gator game and the prediction later on in the show, Iowa State at Utah. Iowa State, like I mentioned, trying to get a berth in the Big 12 championship so they can get into the playoff. Iowa State is a 7.5-point road favorite. The model likes Utah here to win by 2 at home. So take potentially Utah in the upset outright. So those are our top matchups of the week. Let us know what you think when we post this. Let us know if you placed a bet on this. And like I said, those bet agents out there, like hit us up. Our lines are open. We'd love to make you the official better gambling book of the all kinds of weather forecasts. We'll get to the Florida Ole Miss game here momentarily and the predictions. But let's get some fan questions in here. We've been asking you to do the mailbag each week. We will continue to do that. So it's time to get to our questions and comments of the week. And we'll lead it off with one of our best listeners, Lucas the Man the Gator. He's asked us, what's the next commit for the Gators? Well, Lucas, Florida's got a pretty impressive visitors list this week, as we talked about. And the one that I'm looking for on this one, potentially, is another FSU commit, and that is Byron Lewis, who's currently committed to FSU, but he is officially visiting Florida. I like Florida potentially to complete the flip, as Florida right now has a lot of momentum on the trail. Florida State seems to be bleeding commitments left and right. The other is Jahari Medlock, offensive tackle out of Atlanta, who's currently committed to Cincinnati. Florida has been trending for a long time for him. Florida needs offensive linemen in this class. I know he's not that blue chip player, but he is starting to get some looks from around the country of other SEC schools. Florida kind of get on him a little bit sooner out of the Atlanta area. Maybe potentially staying a little bit closer to home down there would be a nice flip to add some depth into that room. So I like Medlock and I like Charles as those two guys to look for, or Lewis rather, in this one to get that flip to Florida. Welcome to the Swamp. Michael Gator has two questions. We'll go ahead and tackle one here. Can we expect similar production for our defensive line of the last three games, or was LSU game a one-off? I honestly don't think it was a one-off. I think this is a team that's starting to play really inspired football. You got a guy like Caleb Banks, who I think is going to could play on Sundays next year. I think he's going to have a decision to make after this season. Tyreek Sapp is a guy who played his best game as a Gator last week. Is another one that I see. Jack Pyburn has been flying all over the football this season for the Gators. Michael, I really think that this is not a one-off. I think Florida actually has a pretty good game Saturday against the Ole Miss offensive line, gets back there to Jackson Dart, makes it difficult for him. And I do like the Gators to shine on this one. Morgan asked, what's the real number on the NIL payout now after keeping Billy? Morgan, I don't know the specifics of it, but certainly we all know the buyout was about $26 million. There was reports back in September that the boosters had raised the money to go ahead and execute a termination agreement with Billy Napier with that money. And now the thought is that that savings is going to pay the NIL fund. And also, but keep in mind too, Morgan, it's not just about bringing in players, it's about retaining players as well. Because everybody knows that other teams are going to try to do what Ole Miss did with Princely and Manulin, and Georgia did with Trevor Etienne. They're going to try to come poach our best and get them to play for their team, trying to sell the fact that Billy Napier is still a lame duck coach. So 26 million in savings according to the buyout, maybe some more because you're not letting the staff go. So you're looking at probably a 30 to $35 million savings on the buyouts alone. We'll see if people put their money where their mouth is, though, on the NIL. We'll know in a couple of weeks on signing day, based on where Florida's ranked, if we're able to flip some of these high-profile guys that we're going to talk about in our visitors list here in a second. But I would say that's potentially what the buy-in is, but we won't know until guys if they actually do come. Richie James asked, "Who's calling the defense now?" Well, Richie, I think that ever since I don't know for sure, but let's rewind the clocks back to the Mississippi State game. That was actually not a great defensive performance for Florida. They gave up 28 points against a pretty bad Mississippi State team. The following week, after 4 games in a row of sitting up in the booth, Austin Armstrong went down to the field and has remained down there ever since. I got to think that there's a little bit something to that. I'm not sure if he's outright calling the plays now, but I think he has a lot more influence now than Ron Roberts did at the beginning of the season when he clearly was the sole play caller. So, Richie, we'll see if that trend continues. But I think it was interesting that after 4 games, the roles flipped. One went to the booth after being on the field, and vice versa. And Austin Armstrong, ever since coming out of the field, overall, despite that, maybe outside of that Texas game, the defense has played very, very well. Last question from Twitter, and we'll move on to YouTube comments. Gator Quez asks, just curious, does the staff try to get Josh Moore from the enemy down south? That's University of Miami. Considering how the receiver class is looking, do we double back and get him into the class, DJ Moore, or has the ship sailed? Well, Gator Quest, I think that this is a situation where Florida is already taking a look at other guys. Dallas Wilson is taking an official visit this week. He's from the Tampa area, currently committed to Oregon, a five-star receiver. The staff is selling to him right now that he's a day one contributor. He could come in and start as a freshman. And if you haven't watched his tape on Huddle, it's incredibly impressive. And I would agree with that sentiment. I think that personally, the ship has sailed on Josh Moore. And I think that's why we're starting to see guys outside of Dallas Wilson also come to campus. Florida has a three-star wide receiver, Muz Tunkara from Texas, who's an Arizona commit. He's 6'4", 190 pounds, a really tall receiver that would Josh Moore fits that same build. I think Florida right now is hoping to get the flip from Moose, and then maybe icing on the cake would be Dallas Wilson. But Florida still has a great receiver class in Nashawn Montgomery and, of course, Vernell Brown III. So if Florida was able to get those four guys, that's an incredible class. And everybody knows we're trying to get French. I think it's a long shot. And right now, I think the staff views Dallas Wilson as the more likely guy to flip to Florida. A little bit closer to Gainesville, or is just as far. Tampa, Jacksonville, basically equidistance. But I think for Oregon is across the country, and so has a chance to have his family only 2 hours away versus a whole plane ride away. I think makes a big difference in that one. Well, that's the one to watch for. I think Gator Quez is Dallas Wilson. I think the staff has given up on Josh Moore and moved on, but I think they're okay with that. I think they're actually at peace with that. All right, let's get to some YouTube comments here, and then we'll move on. G Tringa 5894 commented, Napier lost me the last year with calling the FSU game. I understand why he's been given another year based on a lot of Chris's comments. However, I'm not convinced he will lead the resurgence of the program. The team is playing hard and better with Lagway. But what if we get boat race Saturday? I lived through the 70s and 80s and never have seen us this bad with the exception of 79. Hopefully we have a great ending to this recruiting season and the talent level is high enough to offset some of our coaching deficiencies next year. Win or lose, I am still here to support the team and scream my guts out in the swamp every home game. Well, G Tringa, I definitely agree with that. I echo that sentiment. I will too be in there in the swamp, screaming my guts out, and I will be back next season. Happily be renewing my tickets here in the next couple of months. We'll see. That remains to be seen. Like I said, this is a pivotal week. If Billy Napier and the Gators do pull the upset off this week, I think there's some real momentum, like I mentioned, in the back. So we'll have to see. This has been an interesting commenter the last couple of weeks. Gardner John, who's been certainly on Neil and I for some of our past comments or of what our thoughts are on Billy Napier, but says I've been coming for y'all the last little bit because I'm a fan. I'm a fan that is tired of the majority of the negativity that I hear about our team coming from internal sources. I really do think it's a bad look. I think it hurts the ultimate goal, especially after a decision has been made. I think you guys are true fans, and I know that losing sucks, but I think it's true that Billy is a good coach. I think we are lucky to have him, and at worst, I think we can be a Mark Rick and 10-win games consistently and set the table for the next guy. I personally think he's a guy that can lead a bunch of young men to great things, and I think we've seen flashes. So as a fan, I say be positive and let the results speak for themselves as we move forward. I'm going to leave it here. Wish you the best and say go Gators. Well, Garner John, we appreciate your comment. We appreciate you always watching the show, and certainly we value your opinion of that. And listen, I think we've said it time and time again. We hope our past opinion of Billy Napier not being the coach of Florida is wrong. And at this point, I'll say this right now: we are turning the page on the firing Billy Napier talk. We're going to focus on the future because Billy Napier for the next year will be the Gators football coach. We're going to be rooting for him. We'll be reporting a lot more on recruiting now. We'll be talking a lot more about what potentially the staff changes are. And we're going to be talking about what Billy Napier's got to do next season to have a successful run here as the Gators football coach. So we're rooting for Billy. We want Billy to be successful. And let this be known now. We're putting the talk of firing Billy Napier to rest for a while. And that was another comment Tracy Taylor mentioned there. We've got to move on from the coach thing. He'll be here next year. It is what it is. Let's rally behind the team and stop putting any Florida win on other teams' deficiencies. Yes, Tracy Taylor, 10-4. Like I just said, we now are moving on. All right. Zaire says 8-4 next season and year 4 under Billy isn't going to be good enough for us, being the fan base in Gator Nation. However, the scariest thought that a lot of us has that 8-4 and 25 will be enough for Scott Strickland, and then we'd likely have one more season potentially with DJ Lagway before he inevitably goes pro. I can hope for the best next season, but just like I personally predicted before the current 2024 season started, the first 2 or 3 games of the season will tell me a long ways what type of season it's going to be next year in 2025. A 3-0 start in 2025 is a must and quite frankly doable. At the end of the day, a reporter or whomever needs to publicly ask Scott Strickland himself the question of, is it playoff or bust next season in 2025? It definitely is, Zaire says. It 100% is playoff or bust, in my opinion. That is the opinion that I'm going to hold. I think that's the opinion Neil holds and a lot of our listeners hold, is that he has to do it. Let us know in the comments down below if you believe that's true, if it's playoff or bust for Napier. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this, but yeah, it's a big year next year. It's a big year next year. And there's a lot of other comments as I'm reading from the last show. It is playoff or bust for this. We have DJ Lagway. We've got to be ready. Frankie Golden asked, and he answered the question actually to our last podcast, are the Gators turning a corner? He said, my answer is this team has definitely turned a corner. I'm not sure this program I'm not sure if this program has turned a corner. I feel like our program is being heavily lifted by a generational talent in DJ Lagway. If we weren't here, we'd be having the success befitting of a year 3 championship coach. I don't think so. I hope I'm wrong, but it doesn't feel as if the success has staying power. So interesting comment there, Frankie. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think elite quarterbacks can mask over a lot of deficiencies. That is for sure. So, we'll see going forward if that's the case, but I hope it is the case that we've turned the corner, that the Gators are ready to move on and ascend where they need to be with him as a coach. So, thank you, fans, once again for your questions, for your comments. Keep them coming. We're going to continue to read them here on all of our shows moving forward. We want to make you guys a part of the show and continue to give us feedback on ways we can improve. We want to continue to bring Gator Nation more great content. All right. So, prediction time, X factors. Do the Gators get this done on Saturday? So, Florida, of course, facing the number 9 team in the country. Ole Miss opened up as a 10-point favorite. That line has actually moved in favor of Ole Miss. Ole Miss now is a 12.5-point favorite, according to the recent betting lines out there. ESPN FPI gives the Gators a 21.8% chance to win this game. So not as high as we were. It was 60-40 matchup against LSU. Dustin's model, however, is telling a different story. Dustin's model says that the Gators have a 41.8% chance to win this game at home. He is also predicting that Florida does cover the betting line of 12.5. He feels that the Gators right now, according to the model, have Ole Miss winning 31-20. So that is the official model projection, is that Ole Miss wins 31-20, but Florida does get the cover in this game. So here's what I'll say. I talked about it at the top of the show. This is a chance for a coming out game for DJ Lagway, a true coming out game, a legendary performance that Gator fans will remember back and say, this was the moment that we knew DJ Lagway was going to lead this program to great things. You have to beat great teams to have that ability. And this is the moment on Saturday against a team looking for a college football playoff berth, a team that is number 9 in the country. If DJ Lagway wins this game, it's that moment for him. So what do we have to do? What does he have to do to make that happen? So here are my 3 keys to the game. Lagway cannot be put on the ground often. If he's put on the ground, this is going to be a long, long day for the Gators. Long day. We talked about how, Ole Miss has an insane pass rush. 46 sacks on the season is crazy. And if Florida is not able to keep him upright in this game, they're going to lose. So I think Florida right now, they've got to limit, I would say, sacks to 2. Now, juxtapose that, Florida, I think, has to have at least 5 sacks in this game. Like I talked about, in the games that Ole Miss has won this season, of the 8 games, a combined 10 sacks were had. In the 2 games that Ole Miss lost, there was a combined 10 sacks in those games, averaging out to about 5 each game. Florida has to get pressure on Jackson Dart. They have to get home. They can't let him escape the pocket. And I'm going to say Florida on this day has to get 5 sacks. I'm going to maintain the fact that Florida is going to have to be +2 in the turnover margin. They've done much better job this season of forcing turnovers compared to last season. They have to continue to be an opportunistic defense, giving Florida shorter fields. They have to take advantage of those shorter fields this time around, unlike they were. I felt like they could have done a better job against LSU in doing that. So let's get +2 in the turnover margin. And Florida needs 10 explosive plays in this game. They had 11 against LSU. They're going to need a similar performance in DJ Lagway, having to stretch the field once again of those passes of at least 20 yards or more, maybe 40 yards or more. Can Florida get it done through the air? That is going to be the massive key. I think Florida's going to have to win a shootout style game actually in the swamp to win this game. Ole Miss is going to get theirs. They're going to score in this game. But if Florida is able to match it on the offensive side and make just enough plays on defense, getting home, maybe forcing turnovers against Jackson Dart and these guys, that is their key to victory. So what do I think happens in this game? I've been toying with this all week. My head tells me that, look, it's a massive spread. It's going to be very difficult to cover it. But sometimes in life, you got to go out on a limb. And I know I tend to be the more positive one on this show. I have been in the past. You're going to see a little bit more positivity, I think, on these shows. Always, I tend to lean that way. It's just kind of the way I live my life. But I think the Gators get a shocking win on Saturday. I think that there's something about this one where maybe the pressure is a little bit too much for Ole Miss in the moment. And I think Florida may be turning a corner with DJ Lagway as quarterback. So as long as he's healthy, as long as Florida keeps him upright, I think they win this game. I'm going to go with a score of 34 Gators, 31 Rebels. Gators get the win, they get the cover, and the over 55.5 is also exceeded. Florida wins in a shootout. Florida gets the job done with some massive explosive plays in this game. They get bowl eligibility for the first time since 2022, and they are on track then for their first winning season since 2020, with being heavily favored against Florida State next weekend in Tallahassee. So cheers to that. We'll see if the Gators can get it done. And I think that just about wraps it up here on this show. I want to thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the In All Kinds of Weather Forecast. Please, 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 if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button down below. It's free to do so. Helps us continue to grow and bring Gator Nation more great content. Hit that like, smash that like button, hit that like button down below. Leave your comments. Like I've said, I've proven it. We keep reading them. You post them, we'll read them. So go ahead and do that down there below. Leave your prediction. Am I crazy to think Ole Miss, Florida, if the Gators are going to upset Ole Miss, or do the Ole Miss Rebels beat the Gators on Saturday? Let us know down below in the comments. And if you're listening on audio platforms, please rate and review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating. It helps bring Gator Nation more great content. So from all of us here at the In All Kinds Weather Forecast, I am your host, Chris Yanes. Go Gators and beat Ole Miss.